Stefano Cantarelli is Chief Marketing Officer for Mavenir, the industry's only end-to-end cloud-native network software provider. Stefano is responsible for expanding Mavenir's market share and ensuring it continues to drive innovation that provides value to customers and agility to their technology. He's here today to talk about OpenRAN, particularly its move from promise to today's reality. There are some big questions here. What exactly is OpenRAN and why has it become so important in the mobile telecom scenario? What is going to change in operations with automation? What are the different forces in the mobile telecom industry and what is likely to happen? Well, let's find out. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Stefano Cantarelli.
Hey, Adam, thank you very much. To say today is a very special event. I even put a tie on because it's been such a long time. And also the opportunity to speak about OpenRAN. I think there's been a lot of work, but I'll try in this 20 minutes to actually shed some light upon the many things that has been said. So let me go first to my first slide. Just quickly to who is Mavenir, and just for those who may have just heard, we are a company who is building the future of networks and is a pioneer in advanced technology, focusing on a vision of a single software-based automated network that runs on any cloud. And I think here is particularly relevant. So our tagline, as you've seen from before, and just here on the top, is one network, any cloud, all software. So let's get straight to the point. So I always like these slides because it just say clearly what OpenRAN is. It's open interfaces application on open market hardware. And there is no gray in between. Anything else is considered proprietary. I think this is very important because many people have tried to create some alternative name like Cloud RAN or whatever, but actually there is no middle ground. Either you are open or you are not. So it's extremely simple. And to me, that makes a big importance. And we'll see it in a second why that is so important. Also, I wanted to shed a light on the fact that some people talks about OpenRAN as a technology. In reality, OpenRAN is just open interfaces, meaning open and interoperable. Not all these interfaces can be interoperable if they're not standardized properly. What instead is sometimes understood is that people tend to associate OpenRAN also with virtualization. And here's my second point. vRAN is the application and is the RAN application running on virtualized. So OpenRAN by itself could actually be implemented in legacy technology as long as the interface is open and interoperable. And but the real thing is that OpenRAN went beyond and it became what we call Open vRAN, which means a open RAN system which is implemented with virtualized RAN technology. Okay, so we have done our introduction just to make sure that everybody speaks the same language. So let's now get to the next slide and say, okay, what is this special about this Open RAN? Well, first of all, it's eliminate lock-ins. Now, you have noticed that one of the big successes in mobile industry has been the ability to be able to put many suppliers together and interoperate among those. And in the core networks and so on, there have been these kind of capabilities already for some time. So what happened is that in the RAN space, when in the early days, software and hardware had to develop all together because, of course, virtualization wasn't there where it is today. What happened is that, the vendor at the time, and I've been one of those vendors as much as I've been an operator deploying some of those vendors, they've done a great job in creating this, fantastic technology, that we use every day. And I heard someone saying before, it allow people during locking to actually continue to, to leave and do whatever they have to do. But what happened is that also during this kind of situation and evolving, because of the word economics, the word politics, and the word overall situations, what happened is that some of these companies had unfortunately been melted down. They have been put together, and the today's situation has been that we have been in the hands of just a few companies who have been able to produce these kind of systems. And the reality is that because of the hardware and software, most of the operators are forced to actually buy the same equipment and software from the same companies. That's where OpenRAN brings this additional value. And be very clear, this is additional to the existing technology. We are not absolutely saying that that's needs to replace the old legacy, but it does introduce a lot of more capabilities that we're going to see in a second. The other big things is that OpenRAN is here now and working. And to be honest with you, on this very topic, I like just to say, and believe me, I have been in these long years across all these different, companies and so on. The fact that they are just, some people are just denying the open run and just trying with all their energy to say it's not right. It just tells me it's the right way to go. Maybe you can call me a bit against the flow, but that's normally what happens if people start to try to put some energy to stop things. Then normally means that we're going in the right direction. The proof that is here is that more and more operators are announcing deployments, and we're seeing both in greenfield but also in brownfield. We have heard, I'm sure you have heard all the news from Asia Pacific, in the US, in Europe. So we have got both category of both greenfield and brownfield, which means new operators already have network and they are upgrading their infrastructure. And the last bit on this slide really is the Open RAN requires an ecosystem in a sense that being open requires different components to come together. First than anything else is the hardware, which from one side for baseband is provided by the standard COTS servers, which are used in most of telco today. And the second one is, of course, the radio unit, which a lot of companies are now starting to produce, and we're seeing a lot of variant. Here again, some interesting comments. You may have heard some time ago that people were saying, or some people were saying, the OpenRAN would have not been able to support massive MIMO. But here we go again. In the last month, we heard a lot of news, include Mavenir, doing a lot of work in the massive MIMO. And then we have also heard operators announcing that they have done, trial POC and started deploying some massive MIMO capabilities. So here we are, OpenRAN easier, it's happening. There are operators who's gonna launch shortly in September in the US, a big one with Dish, and so also this point, which has been discussed for some time now, is coming to an end. To be entirely honest, because once you start to deploy at volumes, then any other comment is I think is useless. So why don't we just start to understand in reality what is really that brings open runs, because it is we talked about the no lock-in, and so the fact that there are more suppliers, also that it brings innovation with softer suppliers. We have that have a completely different perspective, because as we know, competition is bringing a lot of innovation, and we in Mavenir, we believe that without the competition, innovation really stagnates. So beyond this, what really is so special? What I think is so special is that Open RAN really gives us an architecture which is able to fit many different use cases. And this is something that has always been very interesting, because operators during their deployment, despite they have their macro networks, but they also face a lot of challenges with special coverage, with enterprise coverages, with other cases like increasing capacity and so on, where actually they needed to try to deploy system in a different way. And in the slides, you can see that whether we are talking about a standard coverage like MBB type of coverage, mobile broadband, or some new coverage in the rural areas, or hotspots, in this case, put 5G, could be others. So where you have more traffic, or in cases where you wanted to deploy some sort of neutral hosting, where some special coverage where someone deploys it and then a lot of the public operator utilizes in a neutral hosting setup, or even the enterprises where there is a need for more coverage in specific enterprises. That's where OpenRAN is able to fit all of these cases with a very, very simple architecture. And I will show a bit later a slide because I wanted to show how these also fit with the cloud, beyond the OpenRAN being virtualized and so cloud native. But there is more about that, which I think also point at a very interesting fact, which is we need to think at deploying RAN for 5G in a different way that has been done up till today. So if we now move to the next slide, what we can see also is that there have been a lot of people talking about how Open RAN with 4G, 5G sits with the legacy, specifically with 2G and 3G. And this sometimes has created some, how can I say, some obstacles or slowdown. But for example, within Mavenir, we've just taken that challenge, and we have just decided to implement a 2G, 3G on the virtualized stack, and so having a kind of what we call a multi-G Open vRAN, where actually we are able to accommodate 2G, 3G technology together with 4G and 5G. And this is not straightforward, but simply because 2G and 3G technologies are very much voice-oriented, and while instead 4G and 5G are really a broadband network. Of course, 5G got more to fit into some other requirements for private network, for IoT and so on, much more than 4G. But the characteristic of the architecture of the 4G and 5G is such that they are really broadband networks with the aggregation sits on the gateways and the base stations that feel that directly connected with any form of concentration, because it is assumed to have a big pipe coming back of traffic from each of the cell sites. So if we further move to the next slide, then we'll try to get, and I summarize here some of the key points that make it so appealing, these proposition of OpenRAN with one architecture that fits all. First of all, it decreases the TCO and the cost of mobile networks. And it does it actually in three different ways. The first one is the very basic one that I think most of everybody have understood, which is by having standardized hardware. Of course, the cost of hardware in high volumes comes down. Having, of course, also more people to produce it, create more competitions and so on. The other one is the overall cost of software. I think, for those people who have been either selling or buying these kind of systems, they know that the software commercial propositions sometimes are very complex. And there are licenses, there are maintenance licenses, there are upgrade path, capacity upgrade licenses. So it's built with a lot of complexity. I think with OpenRAN, a lot of the new software vendors have brought a simplification here, because actually to write software and produce software in a straightforward and agile way creates also a more simple commercial proposition, which removes some of the barriers that were there in the past. And the third component is also in the way it is deployed. While up to today, most of the RAN is deployed up in the cell site, so all the equipment is there sitting at the cell site. With OpenRAN, as in the architecture, you can start to aggregate some of the broadband some of the processing equipment, so the servers, into central locations. And in this way, of course, you take advantage of having concentrated the power and processing, and eliminated some of the most difficult stuff which are deployed at the site, where, of course, you need to bring power, you need to bring a lot of other stuff, and you want to reduce as much as possible your power consumption down at the cell site. The second component is that OpenRAN also brings, as we said before, being innovation and competition, gives more agility and dynamic and quick time to market. Now, this, which I call the cloud native effect, it's interesting because I need to say that a lot of operators have been starting to realize that beyond the TCO and decreasing the network cost, the actual agility has become one of the most important components, because we know that telecom has been traditionally a bit slow in bringing new services because of the nature of the complexity of the network that they deploy. But with OpenRAN and virtualization in general, we have seen that actually these change and gives the opportunity to operators to do better and to do it in a better way. And the last bit is the automation. Automations, will take care of all those difficulties that a lot of people are claiming to be complexity that disaggregation brings. But in reality, it's just a different way of doing things. But on top of that, we have automation and AI that actually brings automations in the operations, and as such, eliminate a lot of the complexity. So as a summary, everybody seems to love the OpenRAN. Well, maybe not everybody, but almost everybody. So if we now move forward, the one I want to bring this point where um, artificial intelligence is important, because the vision that we have in Mavenir about automation and AI is such is distributed across all the layers of the network, whether it's the network, the operations, the services, and the business. And it's pervasive across everything, and is helping the operator to do all the things that they have to do, decreasing the cost, increasing the dynamism and the agility. And I think this is particularly important because if we look at the next slide, we can see how OpenRAN is actually more than just what we said, is a plethora of things that actually brings a lot of innovation. And to summarize, you can see it very clearly that, it's about pricing, innovations, and many other things that are extremely important. When we move to these slides, what I wanted to clarify, and here, remember, this was the slide we've seen before, is that fundamentally, we can distribute the way the architecture of the OpenRAN is in the field, and you can start to have a different way of distribution of your processing power, starting from situations where you have your centralized equipment together with your base station, or you have your base station, your RRUs deployed and talking back with your processing in a central locations, or distributing at the edge, like for an enterprise, your whole applications, including multiple applications like artificial intelligence, or radio intelligent controllers, or things like that. And this is where really we are coming to a point that the cloud has started to become extremely important. And let me get to my last slide to explain why. Well, the first one is enterprise will play a big role with private networks. There is no doubt about it. And we have seen it, because I think private network takes a more, enterprise takes a bolder role. And they just wanted to they wanted to go with the latest stuff. And of course, they also don't have a lot of legacy. And as such, it's easy for them to go straight onto the new innovation. Second, the public cloud provider will enable edge distribution. For them, it's just a natural expansion of what they have done with some of the caching work that they have done in the distributing application of the edge. will become an extremely important thing, which public cloud provider can help CSPs and to carrier to actually accelerate the distribution of applications on the edge. And as such, we will see more and more application on the edge, on the multi-access edge computing, which is not just the application for Telco itself, but we will see a lot of AI for prediction, for intelligent control, for configuration. You have heard all these names: self-optimizing network, self-healing network. But this will be, because it's an open system, will be across all the different suppliers, not just one by one suppliers. And of course, a lot of enterprises application as well. And last but not least, we think that Open vRAN, which is the virtualized RAN, will become, as a matter of fact, the RAN of references for all the things that we have discussed before. And because it is really reflecting what we think, the image and the vision we have of the network of the future. And with these slides, we have summarized what I think are the main points to explain what OpenRAN is, why it's becoming so important, and what are the role of the different players, because it's not going to be just CSPs, but it's going to include enterprises, it's going to include the cloud providers or hyperscalers and many other players into this space. Adam, here I am.
Stefano, much appreciated, sir. Really, yeah, brilliant, really clear, really articulate. I suppose so if we start sort of maybe slightly wider, operators want this kind of more diverse set, I think, of vendors now. Is there a danger with so many moving parts that potentially networks become more vulnerable?
Adam, this is a good question. I think we can look at it from two perspectives. The first one is the fact that you have multiple suppliers doesn't necessarily mean that you introduce a thread. It just means that in some specific interfaces, which, by the way, traditionally has been open. If we look at the RAN to the core interfaces, it's been now for as long as I remember, has been interworking. Yeah, I do remember in the early days, it was a bit more difficult, but now it's like a de facto thing. In terms of security instead, which is probably maybe what you were referring to, if we go with the OpenRAN approach, what happens, sorry, with the open approach in general, what happens is that we think that with open interfaces, people adopt what is called a zero tolerance approach, which is what it is there, what is passing through those interfaces. Of course, remember that these interfaces are still encrypted and so on. So it's not a question about what you can extract for those interfaces, but it's what is the behavior such that you can actually test them. And if there's a threat, you can immediately detect it and isolate it. So, I mean, there's much more than this word. Of course, I simplified very much this matter, which is complex. Yes, it does, of course, more components you bring in, you have to be pay a bit more attention. But as I said, by having a very open and interoperable interfaces, you also have the ability to test them better and to see everything such that also the threat can be seen easier and can be eliminated.
Yeah, of course. And where I sort of, again, we'll move on to sort of dive deeper into much more of this stuff. But if we talk in general, Stefano, for these things to move ahead, you need partners, you need fun, you need stuff, you need projects, you need real life case studies, you need education, you need people to listen to you. Whereabouts are you on that sort of the bigger picture? Whereabouts are we on the OpenRAN journey?
Very good. So you raised a very important thing. When there are some either technological changes, of course, you need more skills, you need new roles and things like that. I think for OpenRAN, if we look carefully, there are a couple of components. The first one is there is a lot that we are learning about 5G. So the whole world is getting on with 5G, and that helps because, of course, by clarifying what 5G is, you start to understand a bit better as well what cloud native software is and so on. And the second bit is that the good news is virtualizations and so on has been already adopted in the core for a long time. So a lot of operator already knows about virtualization. So, we just need to keep on learning, but it's already there. It's not a new thing. As far as, the deployment of the radio, well, some of the basic facts for radio remains the same. So what is about coverage, about, drive test, and link budget, all those things that we have been doing in radio for many years, they don't really change. They're still the same. So we need to keep on capitalize on the experience we have. And last but not least is about starting to take a bit more ownership of some of the aggregation and integration. To be honest, I see these as the operator gaining back some of their space in the technology, because I think in the last 10 years they have outsourced a bit too much to the suppliers. But this is just my personal opinion. And in any case, if they still don't want to get that integration bit, there's always someone like a system integrator who will be doing that for them. So I don't think they have to worry too much. But I have seen the operator already started to get involved more, to create labs and organization, to start to learn about the disaggregation things and so on. And as we said, for some people like maybe a smaller operator who don't want really to bother with that, people like us, like Mavenir, are happy to not only deploy but also integrate and provide the full turnkey, as we normally say, for them. So that's really where I see, and a lot has been done already. And I think the key point, as I said at the beginning, is that we are starting to see the real deployment happening, and that's a good sign. It's a positive sign. It's a green light for me.
Yeah, oh, no, absolutely, sir. And I suppose the other thing that maybe just to cover off before we move on to talk about things is around policies, around regulation, all that sort of thing. So, regulation, I think, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? It's often held as, well, this is what's holding us back. This is why the industry isn't innovative, because of these regulations, et cetera, et cetera. But of course, at the same time, the regulations are used to keep people out of the industry and to keep power where the power is. What about the policy leaders? What are you starting to see there when you're having these conversations about OpenRAN?
I like Adam, you're putting the political aspects onto it. It's a good challenge. I think in this case, actually, for maybe the first time, I have seen the policymaker actually promoting this new way of doing things, this openness. And I think a lot has been because of the diversification of the supply chain, for other reasons as being for security and so on. But what is interesting is this time, actually, the policymakers are working in favor of a competition, in favor of opening the market, in favor of creating a diversification. We will help because the ecosystem will benefit enormously for those policymakers. We have seen this, of course, starting from Europe and from US. I live in the UK, and there's been a lot in the UK moving on, and also in the latest G7, there have been some statements which, to be honest, have been quite strong, considering how, if you want, conservative they have been in the past. So, from that point of view, I would say there's a bit of a shock, in the sense that the policymaker understood the importance of having a competition, having a diversification, and more than anything, they understand the importance of 5G and how 5G can really impact not only the technology but also the life of everybody, because of such a big impact it has on cloud, on enterprise, private network, and not just on the carrier provider.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And interesting, that whole G7 thing. But anyway, I could talk about this sort of stuff for hours, Stefano. But let's go to some questions that have come in through the chat. So the first one here is from Jess. It says, we've heard about the benefits, you talked about the benefits of OpenRAN for operators. In tangible terms, what does this mean for an end user picking up their phone and going about their business?
Very good. Well, you know, sometimes the benefit on the end users are indirect, right? So because operators can do things faster, better, of course, there are more, you know, less cost. There are the operator will put more money against the end users. The services will be available faster. But what I think is really good is that OpenRAN will enable some specific scenarios or some coverages that up till today have not been. So we are seeing, for example, in Europe, some first initial movement of OpenRAN in the rural space where coverage is not existing because being cost-effective operators, you know, have decided to start deploying. So that means a signal for people that didn't have the signal. And I think this is a quite basic enhancement, a quite important enhancement for those people who have never been able to actually use the mobile because they live in a remote rural space. But as I said, in this space is an overall ecosystem benefit where the end user gets the benefit indirectly from a network that evolves. For me, on top of that, you know, there is the overall innovation, which is important and bring a new services, faster services, more intelligence to the services. So you've seen that when I spoke about AI and automation, it wasn't just related to the network and the operation space, but also to the business and the services, which means with some of these edge computing, we can start applying applications which are directly impacting services, creating new capabilities, and also to the businesses, where of course more capabilities from commercial side can be provided to the end user, and as such they can benefit from new commercial terms on their services.
Thank you very much to you, Stefano. Jess, I hope that answered your question. This next one from Jean-Marc says,
I hope too.
the clue is in the name, Jean-Marc writes. OpenRAN, collaboration as well as competition is key to realizing its potential. Good question, this. How do you make sure one doesn't interfere with the other?
Very good. Well, first, because it's open. So in competition, when it's open, means that everyone can contribute. And at the same time, the beauty of being an ecosystem is that you are together and competing at the same time. Well, you know, from our side, Adam, we think, you know, as a Mavenir, for example, our aim is not to become the next Ericsson of the world. It's not our model. Our model is to create a very open environment, an ecosystem where everybody can bring competition and the best to win. So it is the nature of the business where actually you are open, you bring your innovations, and people typically are able to bring innovations and to win at the same time because the space is so big and so huge that actually, you know, there's a lot of roles requiring, and there is, in my opinion, no danger if you go with an open approach that actually you will be, you know, short in being able to succeed in this space. So the secret is simply continue to be open, continue to be innovative, collaborate, because at the end, the best win, and that's as simple as such.
Yeah, so it does seem to be the way forward, doesn't it? We're talking to various kind of people recently, and I know in fintech, they've now got Finos. Manufacturers have got this. In fact, last week talking to people in the energy sector, and actually more specifically in the oil and gas sector, which is of course is quite embattered at the moment. And they're looking very much at sort of open source as well as a way out, and that kind of far more collaborative approach to how do we fix particularly decarbonisation for them. One final question in from the chat. Looking at the numbers, we've got about a minute on this, Stefano. Looking at the numbers, to what extent is OpenRAN approaching global adoption, and what hurdles remain?
Yeah, the hurdle is simply, in my opinion, the attitude to adopt OpenRAN and virtualization in general. I think the technology is ready. Of course, there are different stages, so I'm not worried. For example, you know, for mobile, phones. You know, we always say there's a 6G, 5G, whatever. Nobody asked if there will be a phone ready, because phone will be ready when it's the right time. And the same is for these. So from technology point of view, I'm not worried at all. What I think is more about the attitude to deploy, because I do believe that for 5G in particular, it will require a different mindset for deploy. It will require a mindset for deploy things different, starting, for example, from the fact that in the past you were deploying a network, and once you deploy and it's working, you don't touch it. That's a kind of rule. If you touch it, you might create problems. With the 5G and the virtualization, the things becomes different. You want a network that actually is done to be touched. You want a network that performs the capability. At the same time, you keep on modifying, you keep on improving, you keep on adding new capabilities, you keep on updating. The second thing is that today we are, building out of our existing tower grid, but in the future we want to actually do it from a more densified site, because the coverage and latency in the 5G becomes an important component, and you have to bring more densified site. This brings a new mentality. You cannot just put all your carriers in few places and blast all your power for those places. You need to start to densify site as well. And the last thing is to distribute to the edge and utilize this public cloud capabilities and hybrid situations where not everything is just built on your on-premise, but you take advantage as well about hyperscalers and cloud provider to do more. So as you can see, this is a lot of changes from the past. And I think this is really the hurdle that we need to remove, which means get the people to embrace the change, get the people to do the new things, to understand that those are needed in order to move on, and fundamentally to use the new tagline for Mavenir: trust the future.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Stefano. Much appreciated, sir. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much indeed. Take care.
Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you to everybody.
Bye-bye.